Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the plenary session of the St. Paul's College 170th Anniversary Seminar Series, Build Our Future. My name is Daniel Chiu, and this is Marcus Ng. We are the MCs of today's event.
The St. Paul's College 170th Anniversary Seminar Series is jointly organized by St. Paul's College and Nature Society Hong Kong Centre, and is supported by the St. Paul's College Foundation Limited. The four webinars of the 170th anniversary event held in March enjoyed a resounding success. Each attracted a few thousand participants, including students, alumni, parents, teachers, and the general public when it was held virtually. The webinar videos continue to be viewed by members of the St. Paul's College community and the general public.
Among the eminent speakers were renowned academics, industry leaders, and distinguished SPC alumni. They drew on their wealth of experience to shed light on a range of topics, including technological innovation, healthcare, work and education, and climate change.
Before we begin, may we invite Mr. Ronnie Chen, Chairman of Asia Society Hong Kong Centre, to deliver welcome remarks for the event. Mr. Chen, please.
I suppose it's going to be English. I hope I'll manage. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ronnie Chan. I'm the chairman of the Asia Society Hong Kong Center and chair emeritus of the Global Asia Society family. We're delighted to collaborate with St. Paul College. I have to be very careful because I come from the girls' school, who is an outgrow of St. Paul's College. That is 64 years younger. But just a piece of history, you know that in 1945, St. Paul College, or then St. Paul Boys College, invaded the girls' school. So for 5 years, the St. Paul Boys, young boy, liked the girls from St. Paul Girls College, which eventually became the St. Paul Co-ed. But anyway, welcome. Principal Dennis Yuan, I want to commend you for doing this. You know, we are a Hong Kong-based organization. We have some roots in the United States, but in Hong Kong, we're very independent. Our trustee, Rona Chow, is sitting here. She'll be in the first panel later, so she knows our history well. We have a dual mission. Number one, we're here to better U.S.-Asia relationship. And number two, we're here to better intra-Asia relationship. And so we are perhaps the best place if you want to know anything about the United States and if you want to know anything about the rest of Asia. However, our other mission is really to serve Hong Kong. Because the Hong Kong government gave us this land, I promised to the government personally that we will also do many programs for the local community. So just for your information, oftentimes, before the COVID, in the afternoons, you will see a whole bunch of students from all over Hong Kong visiting our beautiful campus. And I love to take many of you, if possible, but there's no time today, to show you our beautiful campus here, as well as the art exhibition. We have a photo exhibition right now on Hong Kong. And I encourage all of you, before you leave us today, stop by and take a look. It's really, truly an amazing place, with two photographers being featured, one of which is a Hong Kong gentleman, Lei Fuk Zi. Anyway, so we are here also to serve Hong Kong. But let me tell you, the best day I've ever seen here was not many of the students who visit, which I love, nor the old folks' homes people that sometimes we take buses and take them here. But one day I found a whole bunch of nuns from a local Buddhist nunnery visiting us. So I want you to consider us as a resource. Come visit us anytime you want. We are open, we are free, so just stop by. And finally, I want to really commend St. Paul College. We always do things for local communities, such as, you know, people ask me, hey, how do you keep this place? You know, just the electricity cost is almost $1 million a year. And we try to get a discount, we fail. But anyway, So it's not easy to keep this place up, financially and otherwise. And we have to raise funds. And that is, as many of you know, is not an easy task. The chairman, Dr. Arnold Chang, is here, so you know how difficult it is to raise money. But thanks to the generosity of many Hong Kong business people mainly, we're able to survive. This room, this is the first time we meet like this in perhaps a year almost. Our seating capacity now is 120, but in normal times it's 352, and for dinners it is 240. And, but we are really way down now. But anyway, in spite of our limited capacity and our financial resources, we're able to often bring as many as 60 out of a capacity of 240 for lunches and dinners of local students to join us in this place. Where does the money come from? We raise them. So any of you, besides giving to St. Paul College, you like to support the Asia Society, give me a call anytime. But anyway, we provide opportunities for Hong Kong local young students, many high school students, as well as university students. I see many present and former university presidents here. We'd like to give them an opportunity to hear the very best in the world at our cost. So to people like Rona, who is our trustee and our supporter, we thank all of them. So I really want to commend the principal of this wonderful college for being foresighted to do something that, sorry to say, no other local high school have ever done, including my own, the once upon a time girls' school. And I know that there are many leaders from other colleges here. I think DGS is represented, DBS, Marymount, Maryknoll, and a few others. Follow St. Paul College. Give Alice Mong, a very capable executive director, a call, and see if we can do something together in order to benefit the local community. So I want to congratulate you again. I did listen to some of the webinar before. It was very, very substantive. I'm delighted that in this finale that we can be here all physically together and do another program which will be online, and I assume also online, online, so that many others from Hong Kong and beyond will be able to benefit from the thoughts of all the great speakers today. So once again, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Please remain on stage.
May we invite Dr. Arnold Chang, Chairman of the St. Paul's College Council, to present a souvenir to Mr. Ronnie Chan. Dr. Chang, please. Thank you, Mr. Chan and Dr. Chang. Up next, we have a group photo session. Photographers will come on stage and take a group photo of all of you in the audience. All student helpers, please move close to the audience so that you can be captured in the photos.
Before the start of panel discussion 1, we will show you video highlights of the 4 webinars held in March.
St. Paul's College, founded in 1851 by the Anglican Church, is the oldest school in Hong Kong. For 170 years, we have served Hong Kong by honoring our commitment to educate young men based on Christian principles. We nurture our students to be the best of what they can be, to shine in whatever they choose to do, to serve and lead others to make a better and more inclusive world. To mark our 170th anniversary this year, St. Paul's College collaborates with Asia Society Hong Kong Centre to organize a series of seminars with the theme Build Our Future. We are fortunate to have invited a number of distinguished guest speakers and alumni to share their views.
實在個將來咧都係搞革命，革命咧就係要點樣 deal with climate
我哋
change。
可以喺能力上邊可以做到任何嘅嘢咧，都可以改變到個局面。
關於未來 ，it's not about 預測 ，it's about making it happen。
將來要世界雖然有好多新嘅嘢，大家好多 unknown 唔知，但係都非常之多嘅機會。
每一次有好大嘅科技躍進同埋發展，都係有一啲行業一定會受到影響嘅，亦都會有新嘅行業出嚟。
個主要嘅重點咧就唔係 man or machine， 個重點係 man and machine。
喺醫療界嗰度咧，好需要任何仔咧都係可以咧喺佢哋嘅未來咧諗下點樣去幫助我哋嘅醫療系統啦。
處理一個嘅社會需要同埋社會問題咧，其實都好需要咧跨專業嘅協作。
資訊科技或者生物醫學科技等等咧，係將醫療係帶到一個新嘅階段，亦都帶嚟咗好多發展嘅機遇。
而家唔係一條樓梯啊，而家嘅職業嘅方向咧係一個 spiral 迂迴曲折嘅。
將來係乜？仲有工具，我哋係要善用佢，與佢共存，去改善我哋自己嘅生活。
每一個醫療服務，每間醫院，每個診所。最重要嘅其實係愛心同埋關懷。
我哋係一個 lifetime learner 嚟㗎嘛，應該咁而且冇一個人會所有嘢都識晒嘅。
點樣發展綠色嘅科技咧，同埋重新設計我哋嘅城市咧，都係可以幫助我哋跟住嘅未來咧去應對氣候變化嘅。
Throughout the seminar series, we have shown our students that their future is full of challenges, but also exciting opportunities. What matters, of course, is how they prepare themselves to embrace this future. The focus of the seminar today is on us, the educators, schools, university, industry leaders, business sectors, parents, and in fact, anyone who cares about our young people. The question that we should ask is what we should do to equip our young people with the necessary 21st century mindset and skill set so that they are ready for their future. Young people are our future, and they hold the key to creating a more sustainable and equitable future. Let us work together to help them make it a bright one. We look forward to all your ideas and suggestions today.
I'll become an engineer.
I aspire to study fine arts.
I want to study healthcare-related subjects in the future.
Build our future.
Build our future.
Panel discussion 1 will start soon. The theme of the discussion is Future of Technology, Work and Education.
It is my pleasure to introduce the speaker on the panel with us today. Professor Helen Meng, Professor of Systems Engineering and Engineering Management at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and the founding director of the Microsoft CUHK Joint Laboratory for Human-Centric Computing and Interface Technologies. Mr. Dandy Lee, Chairman of Seed Foundation and Senior Advisor of Blue Pool Capital Limited. Professor Kai Ming Chang, Emeritus Professor of the Faculty of Education at the University of Hong Kong. And Ms. Rhonda Chow, Asia Society Hong Kong Centre Board Member and CEO of BICN Asia Institute.
The moderator of the session is Ms. Diana Wu David, who is the author of Future-Proof: Reinventing Work in the Age of Acceleration. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Ms. David, the moderator of Panel Discussion 1.
All right. Please have a seat. And turn your microphones on when you're ready. Good morning, and it's so nice to see all of you. This is my illustrious panel. I thought that was an amazing way to start the day. I feel like if I woke up in the morning and I saw the video where you had those young men saying, "Build our future," I might make different decisions during the day. It would be such a great reminder that everything I did that day would have to be to build our future, our collective future. We're going to have a very interactive panel today, and I feel like it is going to go beyond the panel, because I don't know about you guys, but we have not been gathered, I know, for a long time in person, and so I feel like this is panel plus. We will have questions from the audience later, and I want us to talk about the future of work, the future of technology, future of education, in a way that moves us towards action, and I'm really delighted. A lot of you have already seen the panels from before. We talked a little bit about future of technology. In that panel, we went beyond AI and machine learning and cloud computing. Hong Kong's also looking at space tech. And we really said technology is a real part of the fabric of every day, and that applying technology across many industries was a real opportunity for our kids. And in the future of work, we talked about the importance of going beyond the job title to create real value for society, which many of you on the panel and in this room are doing. And now it's an opportunity for us to really go beyond inspiration to action and conversation for everyone in the room. So I wonder, Helen, if I could start with you, and please, panelists, feel free to have constructive engagement and productive disagreement. But one of the things that we talk about in technology is, okay, students are going to go and they're really trying to get the technology skills that will position them for the future. And one of the things we talked about in our panel was, how can we go beyond the box ticking, the sort of CV aspect of, did I learn data analytics? Did I learn, AI, et cetera, to a new understanding of how technology will play a role in our future?
Thank you, Diana. That's a wonderful question to kick off this panel. So just to start, congratulations again to St. Paul's College, and thank you to the Asia Society for organizing this. I'm really delighted to be a part of this panel today. So technology is really disruptive, especially now that we're living in the age of AI. I think that it's often very difficult to extrapolate and look into the future, because that means you have to look into the crystal ball. But I think one way to approach this problem, one way to think about this problem is, for many of us who are well on our way in our own careers, if you look back when you were a primary school student or a secondary school student, right? Knowing what we know now, how would you think you would like to have had your training then? What could have been done differently so that you would be much more prepared for what are the problems that you're facing today. I think that's perhaps one approach to think about this problem. We're facing tremendous technological shifts, but actually that's not new. I mean, technology is always changing our lives. I think one important aspect, as I was sharing with Diana earlier, our students today are very proactive in looking for internship experiences. But I think I've begun to observe that some of the students, they have good grades, but they feel that the internship is another opportunity to do passive learning. So I have students who will need a lot of hand-holding, whereas other students, I think, who do better would understand the task. They try to understand the task, and they would try their best to learn and fulfill the task to the best of their abilities. I think that process is the most valuable in an internship.
That's fantastic. It's almost going beyond the technology and the shelf life, as we know. Apologies to the engineers of most technology skill sets have sort of a short shelf life. But curiosity, I think, has a long shelf life. Danny, you were saying when I was talking about this, you were like, I got an opinion on that. So what was that?
Yeah, so thanks for that. So at the C Foundation, that's exactly what we're trying to address, because I think a lot of people talk about all the things that we need to do, we want to do, but we need to do it, exactly as you said before. So C Foundation, SEED, in my mind, it stands for skills, exposure, experience, and development. And those are the things that we need to focus on. So it's not just one thing. It's not just, as you said, tick the CV box and said, okay, I studied software coding in school. A lot of our kids today spend too much time just studying for school subjects, but don't spend enough time knowing what's going on in the real world and what the real world needs in terms of the skill sets. So from what I see as someone who's hiring young talent from schools, there is a huge gap between people who hire and people who want to be hired. And I think a lot of you who sit here today in a lot of industries will probably find the same problem. I hear constantly from young people saying they can't find a job that they want. And I hear constantly from people who are hiring, including myself, saying I can't find the people that I want. Right? Why is that? There is a skill gap. A lot of students learn about things, but are not necessarily relevant to what the world needs of them to do today. So at the C Foundation, that's what we're trying to do. I think what we're trying to do is, we're focusing on technology first. So we start teaching, we're setting up courses on cloud computing, on designing user interface, and on data analytics. Those are the three things that we focus on. And we offer this to secondary students to make sure that they, after school, have a chance to learn. And on top, as following what Helen was saying, to offer them internship in companies that were invested by VC companies that are based in Hong Kong, to give them a chance to see what the real world looks like. Because I think things like teamwork, things like problem-solving skills, these are things that I think personally better learn in the real world, where students get the exposure to work with real companies and real teams. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to focus on, and hopefully, this is a very new NGO that we're starting, but I hope this will really make a difference in terms of changing how we are helping our secondary students.
Okay, I take exception of the in the real world, because I think our students are in the real world, and there's so much they can do in schools and whatnot. But Rona, you were shaking your head when Danny said, yes, teamwork, yes. Soft skills.
Yeah, soft skills. Is the mic on? So, hi, everybody. We had a kind of similar discussion when we had a prep session before this panel. And I know that there's a focus on technology and innovation today, but for a lot of our young people, I think before we think about what specific, specific skills do I need to have, there are a lot of very basic things that are applicable and useful across industries. And those are, for instance, communication skills. Danny was saying learning in the job, on the job. Things like, how do you manage your boss or bosses? I think that's a very important skill to learn, and you can't learn that in a classroom or from textbooks, right? And that only comes from being on the job when you are staffed on a number of different projects, and when you have to work with different types of colleagues, right? How do you deal with the frustration of you carrying more of the load than your colleague? Do you complain? How do you handle things like that? Those kinds of skills are very important to acquire, and you need to be in the job, learning experientially. So that's why I was shaking my head, nodding.
And everybody in the audience, when you were saying that, were shaking their heads. That was the hardest lesson I learned in my, illustrious career in banking or any industry whatsoever, how to deal with the boss. Yeah. So one of the things that you said, Professor Kai-Ming, is it starts with people and it ends with people. And I think that follows on nicely, right? So what do you think is missing? Like, what is it? And we're talking about technology, but the more technology there is, the more us as humans have to figure out what we're good at. So it starts with people, it ends with people. So what is it that you think the future of work demands? What are those things that we should be teaching our kids on how?
Yeah, maybe I'll do my presentation with a few stories.
Okay.
Once I was in Singapore, 1997, when they have a project called Singapore One to connect all the schools and all parts of Singapore. And I visited the Minister of Education, and the one who's in charge of technology says, technology is the most advanced when it is taken for granted. I think he's right. We have technology all over us. We have iPhones, we have electronic watches, we have everything. But we never want to understand what's inside because it's taken for granted. But of course, we have to learn the skills, but most of the skills we learn not by courses, not by programs, but we learn by doing. I think there are two methods of methodology. One is education is about people and not about skills or knowledge. Yes, of course, you want knowledge and skills, but it's people who are handling those. The second one is we try to pretend that now we are at A and future is B, and therefore we are moving from A to B. I don't think it's true anymore. We don't know what is B, and B is ever-changing, B is so diverse, and therefore, maybe I should end with a shocking reality. In recent months, in Europe, in the United States and Australia, there are reports there are a large number of people who resign from their jobs. They call it great resignation or big quit. And these are people in the golden ages of their career, 30s, 40s. And the explanation mostly is because of pandemic, they work at home. They have the opportunity to rethink what is going on in the workplace. And they found that they're all manipulated by the work. And they want to be master of their own life. And therefore they quit. Now, they are by no means the majority, but they are by no means the rare minority. So education has to prepare people to be autonomous individuals so that no matter how the environments change, how the workplace change, by the way, the workplace is not the only part of your life. You can be able to deal with all this. Maybe I can end with the analogy in Chinese, 武俠小說啊，武俠小說. That is, you have the internal capacity, 內功. And you have that, you can handle all kinds of external skills. And I think that is what education is about. Thank you.
Okay, that is really interesting, because what I hear you saying is, on one level, people are quitting their jobs because they feel manipulated, and on the other level, we talked about the fact that people aren't taking enough initiative. So these are two, one, I don't have enough autonomy. The other one is you don't take enough initiative. And this is what you were just talking about. Like, again and again, people saying, I can't hire the people that I want because they don't have the right skills or maybe don't take the right initiative. And then on the other side, you have people who are like, the students coming up saying, why don't you give me enough autonomy? So what's going on here? Hazard a guess? Any of you?
I'll take a shot.
Okay.
So I think one issue is, we're talking about technology here, but we must be reminded that technology is a tool. The question is, what is the problem, right? So we have a lot of young students in the audience. It's always important to know what may be a problem, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is the challenge that you're facing? And how, and then you must know what is the problem, and then you want to devise ways to overcome the challenge or solve the problem. And in this process, you then think about maybe technology. It's a tool, right? So it's important to see the big picture, I would say. I think in a lot of times we slice and dice the students' time. This is the time when you learn about big data. This is the time you learn how to code. This is the time you learn about machine learning. And what's lacking, perhaps, is some space for the students to step back and think about the big picture, to see not only the trees, but to see the forest. Right, so we want to, our students, our young generation, we're talking about climate change. The next panel is going to be climate change. That's going to impact the whole world. It's going to impact humanity. So if we think about climate change, how should we tackle this problem? I work on AI, so I begin to think about what can AI do to help solve this climate change problem. So it's important for students to think about what is the problem, how, and what may be some of the ways to solve it. And that will perhaps lead them to start doing some research and maybe learn certain technologies, learn certain skills. But the most important point is perhaps to say, well, if I undertake this task of trying to solve this problem, I'll do whatever I can do to accomplish it, to finish it. I must not be deterred when I face difficulties. I cannot say 这个不好做，唔好做，好難啊, and then I quit. I think it takes a certain amount of resilience that needs to be built up when you actually solve a problem. And internships is sort of the same. What I want to do is to give my interns a problem, and I will give some guidance, and I'd say, go solve it, and go accomplish this task to the best of your ability. And in the process, if you hit difficulties, come back, and we can discuss what to do next. But I would rather not have an intern who come to say, okay, I've done step 1, so what is step 2? I think that will be really slicing and dicing the problem, but it's other people, your supervisor who's slicing and dicing the problem, and then you're just taking a step, according to instructions. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting because you feel like there's so many solutions that we've gone through a certain structure of schooling, and so if students can come with their own ideas and solutions, that's quite interesting. And the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities in business, I believe. Kai-Ming, when you were listening to Helen, you were like, yeah. I saw it. I'm looking at the head nod, so that's why Danny's sitting very still.
Yeah.
I was waiting for my opportunity.
Oh, okay.
Academics are meant to be critical. And in terms of internship, there are quite a number of collaborations between business sector and schools in Hong Kong now. And students go to the workplace for a while and learn. They learn a lot. But then it's different from a kind of career-oriented internship. Because I call it workplace experience. They learn how to be punctual, for example, how to be responsible, how to react with people, how to collaborate with people, how to receive criticisms, how they can open to criticize others, and so on and so forth. And I can give you another one example. Once I was in TE secondary school on visual arts and sports. And I was talking to parents. Parents were concerned if they learn sports and fine arts, how can they find a job, right? I found a student talking who's graduate from Hong Kong University, talking to the parents. He's from that school, and he's working in a big bank. He said, I was the most client-friendly member. Why? Because when I work on an art piece, I have learned to be punctual, because teamwork. I have to learn to criticize others. I've learned to accept criticisms. So I'm always open to all kinds of diverse opinions. And that makes me very, very friendly to my clients.
And possibly a better dinner companion.
Yes,
because you know something besides. Danny, did you want to add to that? I mean, you are pioneering internships. You're really passionate about it.
Well, yeah, but I kind of, when Helen was talking, I kind of was thinking maybe I'll look at this problem, the problem that she mentioned, in a different way of thinking about it. So, for example, I think there's a lot of changes going on. I think all of us can agree that over the last 2 years, the world as we know it in the last 30 years have fundamentally changed. The assumptions that we came with in the last 25, 30 years have changed, like it or not. And we need to be mindful of it, and we need to change with it. So where does that change come from? I think we have, in my mind, there are 4 constituents I think about. The first is the schools. So what does the schools do? What should schools do? In addition to internships, I know the schools are burdened with a lot of things. So I'm on a board of a school as well, so I understand how difficult it is for the principals to balance all this. But some of the things you could think about, perhaps, to give your students more exposure, more experience is not just internships, but, for example, inviting alumni to come speak in your school to share their experience, to give the student a sense of what people before them have done. And it doesn't have to be alumni. It could be someone well-known in the society who's an expert, right? So give them exposure to what's out there, what other people are doing, right? Take them out. Go see the world. When the world opens, go to China, go somewhere, see what's happening. We all talk about Greater Bay. Most of our kids have never seen Greater Bay. Why would they go to Greater Bay? They don't know what's out there. You need to take the trips, organize trips with schools in China, perhaps. Our school have done some of that. Be sister schools, take them to see the world. They need to see what's happening, okay? They cannot just be staying here. So that's the school side. The second part, I would say, is the students, right? Learning has changed. As parents, I think all of us struggle with the fact that you don't want your kids to go online, right? But you also realize, and I also realize, that my kids learn a lot online. My son learned a ton about history and geography on YouTube. And he knows now all the countries, all the flags, the history of Angola. I have no idea how he learned this, but I realized he learned it from YouTube. So there are good stuff that's out there you can learn from YouTube. And I think our students also need to take the initiative to not just only read books or read what's taught in the school, but go out there and learn what's out there. Pick up your own interest. Google, right? Check out what's out there. That's also a mindset need to be changed. And then I think the third thing is parents, right? I think you guys touched on it a little bit. I call it resilience, because a lot of our kids can't fail. And partially it's our parents' fault, because we don't let them fail, right? We don't encourage them to fail. Failure is a bad thing in our society. It's not. And if you look at the Western world, a lot of the entrepreneurs, all these, Elon Musk, everyone, feels like he failed a lot, right? Jack Ma failed a lot before that. So I think failure is actually a lesson that we need to go through, right? And Chinese is a saying, 失敗係成功之母, right? We all talk about it, but we don't actually do it. We need our kids to fail, and we need to mentor them through this failure as parents and care about what they want, and not just go, oh, you suck. You can't, you failed. You're horrible. That's the wrong attitude. I think lastly, employers. A lot of us are employers as well. We're sitting there. I think today we need to, I think Diana in the beginning mentioned that we need to adjust to how we hire, what we offer to our employees, because kids today want different things. we talk a lot about blockchain in the past and all that. If you're trying to hire someone who do blockchain in your company, trust me, you cannot. No one will want to work for a bank to do blockchain. Okay? You can probably at best hire a temporary worker, like on a project basis, do this for you. No one's going to work for HSBC or whatever company to do blockchain or Web3. That's just what these engineers want and what they do. So we need to adjust to that as well and offer different things. And I think COVID has really changed a lot of things in the sense that now work from home is suddenly normal, right? I mean, when I started working, that was not an option, no such thing. But now it seems very normal. I think a lot of you do that now. So I think employers themselves also need to change. So a lot of challenges, but we need to change our mindset to make sure that we are with the times.
That's fantastic. I think that learning how to fail, also in business, it's not something that we always allow for young people as they come in. We almost pigeonhole them so that they can't fail, and we give them pretty rote tasks. But that's another place where they can certainly learn. So one of the things you said, Danny, and I want to ask you, Rana, about is take your kids to see the Greater Bay Area. That's really true. Very few people, maybe even Hong Kong, have really explored the Greater Bay Area and all of its, progress, I guess. One of the things I've heard from my clients is we're going to go anywhere. Talent mobility, working from home means that I'm going to go to Toronto to get my AI person. They even said because secondary schools are investing in that kind of education. So large companies are looking at where the talent is growing in different sectors around the world, because it doesn't matter if you're in Hong Kong or Singapore or Toronto or wherever. So what do you think in terms of the mindset shift that all of us have to make to broaden our horizons? Like, how does that have to change for everybody when we think about the global marketplace?
I think, as many of us have mentioned already, COVID has really, really taught us how to adapt. What we thought would be a 3-month period of lockdowns and whatnot has now turned into a very, very long period. And people have had to adjust. So one thing is you've got to be flexible. You've got to look at the problem and find ways to attack it, address it, and solve it. And looking for talent is one thing. Managing what your normal operations are is also a challenge, and we've had to adapt. So, for instance, one of our businesses is this 50-year-old yarn spinning business founded by my grandfather. Very traditional business, right? So it's in Zhuhai, and for over 2 years since the protests and all of that, the people in Hong Kong have not been able to go on site, right? So that prompted us to make changes in the way we manage and operate. So what never was in place before, for instance, weekly management meetings with the people over in Zhuhai and introducing them to this practice. They were resistant because they never had to do this. 30, 40 years, you just trust us, Rana, we're fine, we'll give you the reports, whatnot. But because we haven't been able to go, and we can't just let them give us some numbers and say this is what's going on, we've implemented this, and that one step has led to so many different changes in management and operations and culture. That's the most important thing, in the cultural change. You can't just kind of slam the table and raise your voice and expect people to do things. That's not me. That's the very old, that's the very old manager who's been there, who always says, I've done this for 40 years, I know what's going on. And we have to tell him, and then giving room for the younger generation to kind of move up, giving them space to voice their opinion. I think that's very, very important. So that's one way technology has helped us or pushed us to change a very old traditional business and how we run it.
Yes, I think there's a difference of view perspective from the employer and from the individuals. I can give you one piece of statistics. 2016 in Australia, there's a forecast that each individual about 15 years old is likely to experience 15 jobs in their life. This echoes what was done in UK 2016 and 2006, 13 jobs. I couldn't believe at that time. I looked at the Department of Labor Statistics in the US, it was 10.4 jobs. So they are going to change jobs. And there's no statistics in Hong Kong. I'm trying to work out how that could be done in Hong Kong. But employers thinking, I want this skill. I want this kind of person. So once one of the VTC heads responded to the employer, but how long are you going to employ them? Right? They can't be with you lifelong. So if you are a parent, if you are an educator, you have to think of they have to face multiple jobs and multiple careers. 2002 in US in the same department, individual lifetime will experience 4.3 occupations. I don't know how they arrive at that, but it's quite true. And if you look at Hong Kong, I just checked last week, there are about over 300,000 business registrations. 99.4 of them are below 100 people. But that's common sense. But 95% of them are under 20 people, 1 to 19. Not only that, 89% of these over 300,000 business registrations are under 10 people, 1 to 9 people. These are very small organizations. Small, flat, and also fragile. So the kind of a long-term employment and therefore long-term commitment and long-term responsibility, loyalty, and so on and so forth is likely to disappear over time, because the relationship between individuals and the workplace and the organization is changing very quickly. And I'm not so sure, but it's a fragmenting society, and therefore individuals' autonomy becomes so important. That is my view from an educator. You have to train them to be able to face such a unpredictable, precarious future.
Anyone want to add to that?
I want to follow up on a point that Rana made. I think that if we go back into education and look at the 5 dimensions of whole person education, right? 德智體群美, right? 德, I think, of course, ethics. 智 is intellect, 體 physical development, 群, I think of it as teamwork, very important. May, of course, appreciation for aesthetics. I think the fact that the world has been seriously affected by COVID, and like what Diana was saying, technology has enabled us a new platform of collaboration. Then 群, right? How do we do teamwork effectively, and how do we adapt? And maybe I may be working with someone from Hong Kong today, but tomorrow I may be working with someone from Toronto. Then I must have respect for cultural diversity. I must develop communication abilities, like Professor Chang was saying, be able to communicate effectively with respect, be able to take criticisms well, and all this because of the diversity that is involved. So the teamwork becomes, one needs to learn how to work effectively as a team, either as a team leader or as a productive team player, so that the bigger good, so that the task can be accomplished well. I think we still go back to the fundamentals, but 德智體群美, but cast it in a new technologically enabled society or world, I should say, because we're not talking about local. Anyway, Diana, you were going to say something.
So I love the anchors, and I think that, we're talking about it's 170th anniversary. A lot of the founding principles, when people talked about education in those times, were similar, right? We wanted the same things for young people to go through systems to become productive citizens of society. Now it's just changing. It's sort of the environment feels like it's changed so much. Back to those 5. One of the interesting things, I did some research on future of work and technology. I looked at World Economic Forum. I looked at Harvard Business Review. I looked at a bunch of futurist reports. And fairness and equity is one of the number 1 trends, actually, in the future of work. This is what businesses, universities, schools have to be thinking about and maybe changing in terms of, how they're operating, how they're hiring, and how we're educating. So what do you think that we can be doing differently or more? What can we stop, start, or continue in terms of bringing fairness and equity into the entire journey that students are taking? Is it important? I'm open for you to say, oh, World Economic Forum is wrong, and actually we don't need to focus on it.
I don't think it's wrong, but I think it's really important for everybody to understand. This is what I tell my children all the time. Fairness doesn't mean equal, right? If somebody comes to me and says, how come he's getting $100 an hour and I'm only getting 80? It's not fair. Fairness, just answering that question, there are so many layers and so many angles to look at it. But I think a lot of people tend to oversimplify what fairness is. Fairness is not necessarily equal. So I think that's one thing that everybody should understand. When you want to improve or raise fairness, or introduce or implement more fairness into whatever organization or systems, it doesn't necessarily mean equal, and all sides need to understand that. I think, Kai-Ming, you had something to add?
Yes, coming to the point of equity or fairness, I have a very practical point. It's not theoretical at all. During the pandemic, teachers in Hong Kong are extremely innovative. They have actually created the whole dimension of online learning, which was very, very rare in Hong Kong. But because of that, teachers discover the real disparity among their children, their students. It's the first time, for example, they say, this student never show up, never open the camera. And then once the student opens the camera, it's a very, very packed tong fong, and very difficult situations. The students is taking, what do you call, 公仔麵, every meal, practically every meal. So I understand now that our education resources, public resources on education are allocated to schools, assuming that if schools have equal resources, and you put students into the schools, it's equal, it's fair. That's equity. But no longer, if we add into the dimension of online learning, which is so common and will become larger and larger, larger and larger. And therefore, I think it's time for us to really considering to really consider how to lower the center of gravity of education resources below schools level to individual level. Now that has to be done in the whole world, but Hong Kong is ready to take the first step. It's really a kind of not only a reallocation of resources, it's a different dimension. It's almost like in the 60s and 70s around the world, people think that open the school, give them a seat. When you have a seat in the school, you get education. This is no longer true.
That's like breaking the social contract. I feel like you just pegged it, because so much of it is, okay, we have school places for everyone. If you've got the seat in a school, and if you're really lucky, it's a seat at St. Paul's, then you will, you'll be fine. And that is, a lot of what I see. If you go to the school, you'll be fine. And then if you happen to go to the university, then you'll be fine. And then you go to the work and you'll be fine. But actually, people have a lot of anxiety. It's all running away from this insecurity that things are not okay, either because they're changing or because in the afternoon you find out that climate change is like at the door. I was anxious looking at the stats. So how do we do that? I like the idea of lowering the center of gravity. It's like personalized education, personalized pathways. You just talked about the amazing teachers during the pandemic. Personalized pathways sounds hard. I mean, is there a role for technology? Is there a way to do it? Is there a good example that you can see of how people are doing that?
I have a low-tech response.
Excellent.
And I was school supervisor at International Christian School for a number of years. And I was sharing this with some of the panelists earlier before the session. To customize education, of course, it's probably not that easy because you're looking at a large number of individuals, right? But I think the first thing that we need to really internalize and believe in is what we had. It's not an official school motto, but at ICS we always said, we are here to develop each student's God-given talents. So my talents could be very, very different from Kai Ming's, right? I may be musically talented, and he may be mathematically talented. So, are you not? You're laughing. So, the first thing I think towards that, customizing education, is to acknowledge that each individual is wired differently, gifted differently. And until you acknowledge that, you won't be able to really customize efficiently and effectively. So I think that might be the first step.
Danny?
Yeah, I would love to add to that. It's just go back to the point about fairness. It's actually, to me, fairness is a very subjective thing. All right? It's because you're asking, I'm sure these studies are asking someone's like, do you feel like you're getting fair and equitable treatment? And people say, no, I'm not, right? So why is that? I think the challenges that we face as educators today is that there are so much information out there that you can see what other people have, right? So now all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm so much worse than the other guy, or so much better than the other guy. I think for the educators going forward, for me at least as a parent as well, it's just how to teach my kids to distinguish between facts versus fiction. There is so much information out there, and a lot of what we perceive to be fair and equitable is based on what we read. But I think the challenge now is, do you actually believe what you just read? Is that true, or is it just someone's opinion? Or is it just a fact? Right? I think we've seen a lot of that. All this talk about fake news. Right? So to me, that is actually the deeper challenge. To me, the world is not fair. To me, the world is not fair. We are success. I think I'm successful because I'm lucky. I'm in the right place at the right time. There are people who are way smarter than me who probably make less money than my parents are way smarter than me, but they were born in the Cultural Revolution. They couldn't do anything. There was nothing they could have done to change their life. We were growing up in a time where China was booming. Like you could have been half idiot and you would still be successful. So I think it's not fair. The world is not fair. But we have to teach our kids how to be resilient. I go back to the word. It is not fair, but how do you try to make the best out of it, and be content perhaps, and be happy with what you achieve. A lot of societal problem I see today is perhaps this perception of that it's not fair, and then not doing much about it, or feeling there's no way about it, and all this anger gets penned up, And as parents, as educators, we perhaps should, in addition to teach them the basic skill sets of math and English and Chinese, to teach them a little bit of life lessons as well on the side, and teach them how to be resilient and treat how all these issues are in the world, and think how lucky they are and get a platform, and to be subjectively understand where they are.
The world is not fair.
I agree.
Yeah. But you cannot allow a lot of people with deprivation. There is a minimum level that they should receive, and beyond that is competition. Right? If you are deprived of competition, that is the basic unfairness. Now, could I think of what education is about? I'm an educator, so I can only talk about education. There are several dimensions now existing in education or in terms of learning. One is the required learning. I don't think we can struggle with that. We can debate with that. The curriculum is either good or bad, will be there. Examination will be there, university entrance will be there. Right? The second part is that is community life, community learning from community life, which is not included in the curriculum, but is essential. Then there is the online learning part, which is semi-required, but it's not always required. Right? I can see students, a boy, 8 years old. I said, what are you doing on the iPhone? It's about Second World War. He can recite all the years about Second World War. But this tells us that there is one dimension that we cannot control and we should not control. Because that is the autonomy that he or she could develop and will be essential for his or her future life. So all these dimensions, if we can allow these dimensions to happen, we are doing fairness to the children.
Why isn't it happening? Seems pretty simple. We just let all of our children go on their phones more.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not happening. I don't think we should have a negative view of what is happening in Hong Kong or around us. Things are, many good things are emerging, whether we treasure that or think that this is superfluous. Right? If we treasure that and allow that to happen and to minimize the kind of rigid and, as you said, the rigid part of it, and that we are doing them justice. Right? This is the process we are facing in Hong Kong. I always talk to school principals that, no, I know all these are good things, but they have to enter universities. They have to choose subjects. They have to get DSE results. I said, yes, but those should be taken for granted. It's not a black and white situation, not a zero-sum game. So take it for granted. As you brush your teeth every morning, you have to learn this. You have to pass examinations with good results. But then, they are human beings. And we underestimate their capacity to allow themselves to shine in all dimensions. That is the fundamental principle, I think, for education. Believe in students, trust that they have the capacity, let them experience, let them endure, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think the professor pointed out practical issues I think all the principals and educators face, because there is a system in Hong Kong that we all have to follow, right? No matter what you say, they take an exam, that's how they get into college, and that's how your jobs are judged, whether or not you're a good principal and you do your job. So I think, practically speaking, that's why we do what we do at C Foundation, is that we offer something to the side. It's not quite customized like Ronald was saying, but it's at least giving people an opportunity to pick what they want. Yes. You don't have to join it. If you happen to find an interest, you get an exposure to try it out to see what it's like. And that's the best thing we can do at the moment, outside of school, right? We cannot disrupt the main part of the school, but that's the part that we try to do what we can on that side. And we try to, as Ronnie was saying before, we try to raise capital to help subsidize some of these students in terms of education to balance out more the fairness aspect. But it's, we're trying. It's not easy.
I think what SEED is doing is for the future. Is the future, actually. In 2016, again, there is a survey among all Hong Kong secondary and primary schools. They found that there's an average of 11.3 projects, collaboration projects between schools and outside bodies. They are not about competitions. They are not about kind of people coming to school to teach English. No, they are outside school experiences in society. And I think that is essential, and that is so important.
So I wish to follow up on, or add the technological perspective to the discussion on fairness. We have, at COHK, we have a team. I led the curriculum team to develop an AI for the Future curriculum. Many schools are adopting this curriculum for junior secondary AI education. And inside, we have an emphasis on AI ethics. One part of that is on fairness. AI is not fair, okay? Because the machine learning algorithms simply learn from big data. Big data may not be fair. It captures certain unfairness that appears in our society. So just to give you an example, some years ago, Amazon had a recruitment bot. So it's an algorithm that screens CVs. And that algorithm was trained on about 10 years of recruitment statistics within Amazon. And they started using this recruitment bot to filter the CVs. And then it suddenly emerged that that algorithm will generally score down women applicants. And if I tell you this now, you can probably guess. That's because in the tech industry, even though you have 10 years of recruitment data, generally there are more men than women. And therefore, the machine learning algorithm learned an attribute that if it sees a woman's name or if it sees this entry in the gender, it will just lower the score of that candidate. So that's unfairness. And it was discovered after the recruitment bot has been used, right? So therefore, it is very important for us when we use technology to know that technology doesn't always guarantee fairness. And there's something that we can do about it. So there's actually research that looks into the algorithms that tries to neutralize any unfairness. So this is an active area of research, in fact. So that can go into our education. That example is also listed in our curriculum. So students have exposure to that. And when I'm on this point, I remember just now, Danny talked about exposure. I think it's very important for students to see what's going on in the world in the curriculum. And so in the AI for the Future curriculum, we try to incorporate examples, global and local examples. And perhaps it's more important to have local examples so that our students know that in our society here in Hong Kong, or maybe even in GBA, there are very innovative uses of AI that is happening. So the examples don't always come from abroad, like the US, right? So for example, we have some AI enabled etching technology that can etch logos onto different materials, including diamonds, right? So there are a lot of interesting technologies, and I think bringing local examples into the curriculum to help students gain awareness of what's going on may pique their interest. And they say, oh, I didn't know that such and such a company here is doing this. I'd like to, you give them a thread, right? I want to follow this thread, and I want to know more about it. And then you pique their interest, and maybe they can identify certain pathways of further learning or further development.
Can I just add one quick point? And I was reminded of number of episodes in my own life as a younger student, and again recently reminded by my youngest daughter who's graduating high school in a few days. We often label ourselves and limit ourselves, right? I'm not a science person. All my 3 kids tell me, Mama, we're not science. We didn't inherit the science gene from whoever, right? And I said, oh, I don't have that gene. And that labeling, you can trace it back to very often, very commonly, you trace it back to performance in a class. And that's very sad, right? So let's say they're taking calculus, and all the math grades until then were very satisfactory, and then calculus was what stumped them, and suddenly the student says, I'm not a math person. And that can lead to a lot of self-limiting moments. And how it relates to AI, I think a lot of people think, oh, AI and tech, only a science-oriented person can go into that path. It's not true. Because we also, I run our own family office, and we do a lot of AI investments. And I, myself, made that mistake of thinking AI is all about just ultra tech and all that, right? And when we went to these summits and we found out a lot of applications are very, I wouldn't say basic, but everyday life that AI is applied. You know, apple picking. In China, I think it's one of the biggest markets for fruit picking using AI. But it's not super, super high tech. So to our educators, to our parents, and to our young people, don't label yourself, especially negatively, right? Oh, I can't do art, I can't do math, my English is bad. Because that will stump you, and you close your door to that road. Yeah.
I just want to prep you guys. We're going to go to questions. Kai-Ming, go ahead, and then for audience questions, we'll go right after Kai-Ming.
It's about labeling. I would recommend you to watch one tech talk by 2 ladies. One is Helen Tupper. The other one is Sarah Ellis. It's about the snapshot about me. It's about letter and squiggle. They were senior CEOs and quit their job and formed an NGO. And they were talking about the traditional career path is a ladder. You know very well where you will end. You know what are the steps, and you go through the steps and you'll be there. In a way, it's very cruel. Because they said then you are taken back to only one path. You have no extra interest, you have no extra goals, and you don't know how to go elsewhere. And they said now the world is not always like that. It is true. And therefore, I totally agree with Rona that now a lot of students' value systems are hijacked by their scores, by the exam scores. And of course, how we deal with the scores, as Dennis said, this is very cruel. And now sometimes you think that you have to, so I am quite uncomfortable with the term career planning. When you are young, they said even you should plan your career even in primary schools. Well, very cruel. How can a small kid in his happy life think of, oh, I will be a doctor, I'll be an engineer. This is not for his good. This is very cruel. They are hijacked by the ladder, and the ladder starts with schools.
That's a lot of responsibility. So what I'm hearing is it may not be possible to personalize, but it's definitely possible to choose your own adventure for students now. And I would say all of you as well. Are there any questions from the audience? I invite you. This is a lot of work ahead of you in terms of we came from technology, but we've unpacked some really deep issues in terms of leaving space to allow people to shine, allow students to shine and work, allow them to fail, allow them and inspire them to think of their own curiosity. Because it's not about giving them a menu of, okay, here's exposure to AI, ML. I don't know about you guys, but I've been looking at those things online, like, should I take the MIT blockchain course? I don't know, do I need to do that? And that's what the students are. This whole crowd right there probably already took it. And so there is that exposure, but I can't help but come back to the idea of problems. The idea that, it's not about like giving people like a menu of exposure to different things. It's about how do you get fired up about what is curious, like AI and ethics. Wow, I can't believe Amazon's going to recruit more men because of AI. That gets me fired up. Maybe I should learn more about this AI, and that kind of thing. Ken talked about his own son saying, he was interested in architecture. So carving out time to spend time in an architecture firm and really think. I myself was at a magazine in high school as an apprenticeship program 1,000,000 years ago, and I ended up working for Financial Times. These are not, immaterial. You start to explore and label yourself. So what is it that we can do collectively? I'd love to have questions. Or if you'd like to stand up and just say, I commit to actually, in 3 months' time, changing the way that I'm approaching something, I welcome that as well. Yes, Ken.
Sorry, I just start a question. Thank you very much for the sharing. I think it's very revealing, and I think a lot of us here will all agree, because we're both parents, employers, I noticed in Hong Kong, right? The industry of private tuition is booming, right? Everywhere, after school, every single kid. So I think on the academic side, we are very strong. We have all this private outside school tutoring thing. And yet, I think, and that actually focused the whole scene on grades, academic. It's just sort of very late. It's just, what do you call that? Pigeonhole the whole thing into that very narrow aspect of subjects. Now, and I'm hearing from the other side is internship, knowing about the world, knowing about the problem. And it seems like there's a big gap between schools and outside world, or maybe the industry. So what can we do actually between the other, rather than just a lot of private tuition company or classes? How about the other side? From the educator point of view, what can the Hong Kong industry, right, do about creating this whole atmosphere or this the trend of the school working outside with all these companies, industry, or even research institute, university, so with our kids have a legs up. So we are not so retarded on the other side, very super developed on the academic and knowledge and the grade side.
I'll go first. I think to put it very simply, it's a supply and demand question, right? Supply and demand. If the demand is there, the supply will come. So as you were asking the question, I was thinking about these co-op programs in the States. I think they're in colleges, but maybe similar programs even exist in high schools, where the students are required to spend time working, maybe even take a semester and take a job. It's part of the graduation requirements. It's part of the curriculum. So schools or our system here, if we implement that into our curriculum, if we put that into our curriculum and we say we want to have each student spend X number of days per week or how many months out of the senior year actually doing an internship. When there's this demand, then the industries and the companies, I think, will more easily sign up for it. Right now, I'm very willing to provide internships, but how do I even advertise? How many internships can I provide? Which schools do I approach? I end up probably just approaching the schools that I know. So that goes back to the unfairness, right? So I think it has to be a collective effort.
Yes, it is actually happening. In terms of curriculum, in the last education reform, there are two elements which are related. One is called applied learning, which I don't quite like the term, which means workplace experience, and there are other learning experiences. And that leads to, as a starting point, where I mentioned that there are an average of 11.3 for each school, and it involves about 5,000 outside organizations. So I can advertise for you that Rhonda is going there. Yeah. However, it's not because of compulsion. It's not mandatory, but it blooms. However, it has its limits. Unfortunately, forgive me, it's because universities don't pay attention to them. And you go to university, they have their own reasons. That will be seen as unfair. The numbers are most fair, right? The fairest are numbers. And therefore, but you have to look at the US because of other reasons. The leading universities are getting rid of standardized tests, starting with Chicago University. They have other reasons, basically because of racism. But then it means that it's possible. In the UK, A-levels are easy to get by, and so universities give you conditional offers, right? And they have all these means to admit students. So I think it's time for a change in Hong Kong. But yes, you point at the right point that there are so many organizations in Hong Kong who are willing to help, but they don't know how to do it.
A question here?
Yeah, this is a very good discussion. Thanks about this. And we talk about a lot of the fascinated AI, technology, all this stuff, right? And I work in the finance industry. Now we put the focus on talking about culture. So in any education talking about the technology, is there any component to talk about like the integrity and how to use technology? Because technology is neutral, right? Something is neutral. You can use it very wisely to build the world. You can also use it very like massively to actually like destroy the world, right? So anything from the education side, when we talk about a lot of the knowledge on the technology, anything about the principle or actually like the moral of using technology?
I'll take that question. Yeah, thank you for the excellent question. In fact, that is indeed an emphasis in our pre-tertiary AI curriculum. We talk about AI ethics because any technology, if you think about it, it's a double-edged sword. You can use it beneficially. You can use it in such a way that may cause harm. So, for example, in my own research, I work on a technology called voice reconstruction. We try to help those with, let's say, with stroke, which affects their pronunciation, and therefore their speech can no longer be easily interpretable by friends and family around them. And so the voice reconstruction technology will take in the disordered speech and try to transform it automatically to sound like the person, but in normal sounding speech. But because the technology itself can adopt the voice characteristics of the target speaker, you can think about how to use it to impersonate someone and, let's say, attack a voice print system. So therefore, I think we need to find ways. Now we're actually doing another kind of research, which is called anti-spoofing. So we want to build technologies that can catch the manipulated voice so that it will protect voice biometric systems. And of course, that is addressing the problem from the technological perspective. But one should also think about addressing the problem, maybe from the legal perspective, right? And then we need lawyers to help us on that, because engineers can't do legal things. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I say that, yes, that goes back to my earlier point about starting with human beings. Because if one is ethical, he or she is ethical not because of technology, not only in technology, but overall. And that's because you have a 德智體群美, the moral, the intellectual, the physical, the social, and the aesthetics. Moral comes first, right? That's a good tradition, because no matter what you learn, whatever what you have, your basic value system governs your actions, right? It's not because of technology you become ethical. It's because you are ethical, so you can ethically use technology. And that is perhaps also important to, that's why I said you don't start with knowledge and skills as a philosophy. Knowledge and skills are important, but I had a discussion last year with OECD, there's a small group discussion. They talk about coding. And we almost come to the consensus, coding may become trigonometry of tomorrow. Nobody now teaches trigonometry. At my time as a student, it was kind of a part of trigonometry, geometry, algebra, right? Coding will be taken for granted over time, right? And a lot of people are now doing coding not because of schooling. Now, I'm not depriving that you should not learn coding. No, I'm not talking about that. But you have to think of what is essential. For example, we have scientists in the audience. I hope scientists can tell us what are essential in science, rather than just chemistry, biology, physics.
We have one more question. Time for one more question.
So, yeah, I stand up so that you know who's talking. You all have a mouth covered. Anyway, so I'm a scientist because I'm not an educator, I must declare. I was an administrator at a university for some years. Okay, but I did make a lot of observations because scientists do make observations. And I thank you for the panel discussion. I learned a lot, and I do have a lot of reflection. I'm not a strict linear thinker, so I tend to jump around. But I do want to come back to the sort of basic principle, or basic problem or discussion here. That is, we're educating people. And someone mentioned about genes, someone mentioned about individuals. So we are all different individuals. We have different genes, okay? So we are all different. And then we're talking about systems. We have a traditional system, okay? We lived in there for a long time. And we want to change the system. So we're a new curriculum, we're DSE. Now we're talking about a lot of new ideas to educate an individual. But these are all different things. They're different it's okay. They have different genomes, they're different individuals. So how do you educate a heterogeneous group of people with a set or some sets of systems or technologies, whatnot? Okay, so, but of course this become an open question and say mine is the best. But I do think that people are very adaptable. We are all very adaptive. Just look at the pandemic here, that we all adapted to speaking with a mask on. Okay, so human are very adaptive individuals. So some say that because of the return to China, that the group of doctors graduating from around 1997 don't go to that cohort of doctors because they were no good. The good ones left. Okay, but who remember those doctors? Okay, many of them are still here. So people learn to, and also during pandemic, we have stoppage of classrooms and so on and so on. I might be digressing too much, but I think using AI may help students to learn. I always try to promote that, but it will be a different sort of a story. Okay, but I do think that technology can help. But how to help and how to build different technologies on a system that everyone can follow. So I think in this system, we're talking about ideas, technologies, and so on. We forgot about a major part of education, the deliverer who help the students learn, right? So I think Kai Ming, I always listen to Kai Ming. So can you elaborate on that? How can we help the student learn? And our training of the teachers, I mean, if I make it very clear. Okay, so missing the major component here. You have all the technologies, but we don't have the right group of educators or teachers to help.
So what about the teachers, Kai Ming? We have 1 minute left.
That will consume about 1 hour.
Give us an amuse-bouche.
But thank you for the question. I can only say thank you for the question. It's a big issue. The system, the schools, the teachers, the students. UNESCO just last year published a book called Reimagining Education. And I think you have a question. I can only I can only sympathetic with your question. Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer because there is also danger in some of the places, for example, in some of the states in the United States. They concentrate on the teachers, thinking that appraisal, control, accountability of teachers will improve education, which is, I think, the wrong side of the what do you call it, the stick, right? Then teachers become concerned about their own jobs, their own performance, because they relate students' performance to teachers' performance, which is ridiculous, because students are meant to, and that will not be improving education. So my own endeavor is to start with learning, how students learn, and to see what is the best for the students' learning, and then you can think back what teachers can do. I have to say that teachers in Hong Kong, in our tradition, is doing too much, too heavy burden on them. Some of them don't have dinners until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But doesn't mean that students are enlightened. I think enlightenment is important. This is the little bit I can only say at this point. Maybe Danny has something.
Yeah, no, I'll just answer you quickly because we face that issue at C Foundation because we have these courses and we have to find the right teachers because if the teachers are boring, the kids don't want to learn. So we have to make sure that these people who are delivering lessons actually can teach it in a fun and interactive way. And there's no shortcut. I totally agree with you. We have to train the trainers. That's what we're doing right now. As a first step, we have to teach more people to try to get to this. It's very difficult, but we're trying to make it work.
Last word, Helen.
Okay, so thanks for the question. So one approach that we have taken when we wrote the curriculum is, in fact, invite the teachers while we were developing the curriculum. And it's a co-creation process. And so we have a few pioneering schools. The teachers actually join us and we discuss the curriculum. So they understand it and the objectives, and we discuss how to best deliver in the classroom. And now we're trying to build the ecosystem where these teachers from the pioneering schools can help new schools that are coming onto the bandwagon. So we're trying to build this ecosystem for teachers.
That's a bright spark of hope. Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you so much for your time, all of the panelists, all of the audience, all of the teachers, and the students. That was really interesting. I think we delved deeper into ethics and integrity and society than I expected, for one, in terms of tech and the future of work. But I think these are really important questions, and I expect that St. Paul's can take a lead in terms of determining what possibilities there are to make things better, starting with the learning. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful ideas in panel discussion 1. All speakers, please remain on stage. As a token of appreciation, we would like to present souvenirs to the moderator and all our speakers. May we now invite Dr. Ian Chan of St. Paul's College Foundation to present souvenirs to them. Dr. Chan, please. The image of stone plaque on the souvenir was taken from the rubbing of the signage inscribed with our school name on the wall of the bishop's house. May we invite Ms. Rona Chow to receive the souvenir, please. Professor Kai Ming Chang, please. Mr. Danny Lee, please. Professor Helemon, please. And Miss Diana Wu David, please. Miss David and all the speakers, please move to the front of the stage for a group photo. Thank you, Dr. Chen, Ms. David, and all the speakers. Please be seated in the front row of the hall. We will have 10 minutes for intermission. Panel discussion 2 will start after the 10-minute intermission. The restrooms are one floor down, next to the Asia Society store. In the intermission, we will play through a short video about the celebration of the 170th anniversary of our school. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The theme of panel 2 discussion is Future of Climate Change and Healthcare. May we invite the speakers of panel discussion 2 to come up on stage. They are Mr. James Chan, Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of Hong Kong Housing Society. Mr. Wing Mo Leung, former Assistant Director of Hong Kong Observatory. Professor Raymond Liang, Head of Department of Medicine, Hong Kong Sanatorium and Hospital. Dr. Deakins Yeung, Director of Cluster Services of the Hospital Authority. Professor Stephen Lau, Honorary Professor of the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Hong Kong. Professor Christine Low, SBS, JP, OBE, Chevalier de l'Ordre National du Mérite, Chief Development Strategist of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Professor Christine Low is currently not in Hong Kong. She has prepared a recorded video for the session. Mr. Anna Wu David will continue to be the moderator. Now, I will hand you over to Ms. David, the moderator of panel discussion 2. Ms. David, over to you.
We have a treat for you. This is going to be the multimedia panel, actually. So we're going to start with a video from Christine, who couldn't be here, and we're going to give you some visuals. We have WM, who will set us up for some of with the data in terms of the relationship between healthcare and climate change. And we will also have Professor Stephen Lau talk about some beautiful visuals of some of the solutions, and then we'll dive into the panel first, if that's okay with you. Thank you so much to my esteemed colleagues on this panel. We've had 2 panels already on climate change and healthcare. I can't think of 2 topics that would be more, bigger to talk, and now we're combining them to one panel. So it's a lot of work. Some of the things we talked about before were really the relationship between it, the fact that climate change is so important, that it touches on so many aspects of society, from housing to aging to education, etc. And I think that what ties it together is really what ties this entire day together, which is that it's all about having sustainable futures for ourselves and for the next generation. So thank you so much for being here. Let's roll the tape. Go to the video.
Thank you for inviting me to say a few words on this important occasion. Let me start by sharing some ideas of what we can do to prepare ourselves to meet the climate change and sustainable development challenge. Let me start with schools and universities. We have the privilege and responsibility to work with young people day in, day out. As educators, we can think about what young people need to know and be equipped with going out into a world where the climate is changing. The science of a changing climate is now very clear. How can we teach mathematics and the physical and life sciences in ways that illustrate climate change? How can we introduce the social sciences, such as economics, history, geography, politics, and international affairs, to young people that helps them understand how the world actually works? Because young minds want to know how they can contribute. Solving problems is not all about science and technology. The humanities and the arts teach us about comprehension and expression, which are vital for human-to-human communication. The humanities and the arts are then just as important. How can schools and universities reimagine not only what and how they teach, but also the teaching environment itself? Can we reimagine the campus of the future? Can they be living labs? Can we retrofit our school buildings so they're truly green, smart, healthy, and sustainable? Can we activate our alumni to help us by using their professional expertise and also give us their donations? What role can campuses play in their neighborhoods? How can we engage our alumni to come back periodically to renew their knowledge and their commitments to do social good? For parents, is this what you want from schools for your children? If you share this vision, how can you help to make it happen? Parents can be assured that the sustainability challenge is a long-term trend that affects all jobs. There will be new types of work that will focus on solving the climate change and sustainability challenge. Your children today are part of the global army in the climate and sustainability revolution. They need to solve big problems of the energy transition. They need to protect ecosystems and biodiversity. They need to create new businesses of the future. The world hasn't been there before, which is why I say this really is a revolution. So encourage your children to explore all kinds of ideas. If we teach our children right, they will want to explore. You must encourage them to have fun at home too. Do fun things, like who can take the fastest, cleanest shower in your family? How about tracking your family's food waste and reducing them, of course? How about tracking your electricity consumption so kids can help you lower your bills? If you run a business or work in a company, you can help to define what is the environmental footprint of your company and then develop a plan to lower it. If every organization in Hong Kong look at lowering its electricity consumption by, say, 5% in the coming year, wouldn't that be great? So why not start with your organization? I'm sure you can look at reducing waste. In any case, the government's waste charging scheme will probably kick in next year, so it will also save you money. Lastly, what kind of regional neighborhood do we want for the Greater Bay Area? We know we need to cooperate across the boundaries. Can we start something that everyone could support? How about starting a food waste reduction program in the whole of the GBA? The mainland already has its Clean Plate campaign. How about asking the new chief executive in Hong Kong to do the same here, together with Macau? We can track results and we can feel proud of making improvements. I know I've raised many questions, and I don't have all the answers to these questions, but I hope you will reflect on them and start a positive and energizing conversation. Thank you again for including me in this important event.
Wonderful. Well, a revolution for our times, and that's a lot. We are going to go into the data, and one of the things that the students outside said when I said, what do you think I should ask for this panel? Because of course their questions are the most important, was how's it going to affect me every day? And I think that, do you have the slides up for WM? He's going to show us some of the data for what's happening in Hong Kong, which is really striking. WM, do you want to narrate this with your microphone?
Sure. I think I better follow the example of Professor Cui Lap-Chi. Stand it up.
Okay, don't stand very close to the stage edge.
One of the reasons why climate change could impact health is rising temperatures. Maybe we can, dim the light a little bit. for the sake of better visualization. So this is, we have 3 charts here. They are what we call the distribution of temperature over land in the northern hemisphere for 3 periods, all right? Starting with 1951 to 1980, 30-year period we used to use as a reference. So this sort of distribution is used as a reference. For those of you who are not mathematically or scientifically minded, forget about all these numbers in the x and y axes because they are the awkward statistical term called standard deviations. Just focus on the colors. The white, the red, and the blue. The white represent kind of average or so-called normal temperature in that period of time. The red, hot temperatures, and the blue, cold temperatures. They are evenly distributed, about 1/3 of those. I mean, the area is also important. The area represents the chances of occurrence. So about 1/3 normal temperature, 1/3 cold temperature, and 1/3 hot temperatures. There is, in fact, a 4th category, very hot, but the probability of occurrence is very low, 0.1%. Now, let's fast forward some 40 years. The distribution have shifted here. We found that the so-called hot temperature has expanded significantly at the expense of the white colors and the blue colors. And what is more important is that this kind of trivial, in the sense of probability, becomes a lot more significant, 4.7%. Fast forward another 20 years, we now see that the red color, which we used to describe as hot, becomes the new normal. And then the very hot weather becomes 22.1%. So this is the past. How about the future? We have 2 directors of the observatory here. They have updated the projection, making use of the latest information by the IPCC. The color represents what we call the emission scenarios. This is an intermediate carbon emission scenario, meaning that we do some climate actions, but not quite enough. And this color represents business as usual, no climate action at all. So making reference to this period of time, we will see that by the middle of this century, the maximum temperature will rise more than 1 degree Celsius, and also the minimum temperature will rise more than 1 degree Celsius. Now, note that going back to the last slide, a very small increase in average temperature can give rise to a significant rise in very hot weather. So if the average temperature should rise by more than 1 degree in the future, then it is a scenario which is unimaginably bad to all of us. Well, we also noticed that the minimum temperature rise is actually larger than the maximum temperatures. That creates more chances of what we call warm nights or even hot nights. And those people who are what we call lower in socio-economic status or standard are more, stand more suffering. We have a lengthy discussion about equity just now, fairness just now. This is another example of how climate change can exacerbate or making the fairness situation even worse. One indicator of the health of a population is hospitalization, in particular hospitalization not involving any accident. Unfortunately, we are seeing rises in hospitalization rate. This is a chart where the days of the years are stratified into working days and non-working days. We find that for the working days, the rise is more significant. Now, there was a study by Hong Kong academics and also involving Hong Kong observatory people trying to correlate the excess hospitalization rate with the heat indexes. We have 3 common heat indices. And the correlation is very clear. The higher the heat indices, the higher the excess hospitalization rate. And the study also found out that for hospitalization as a result of infectious disease, as a result of respiratory disease, and also cardiovascular diseases, they are pretty much the same. The rise is pretty much the same. But then when it reaches a certain threshold, there is a rapid jump. And that is explained by the rapid increase in cardiovascular diseases as a result of very high temperatures. So that is one impact to us people in Hong Kong. The other is about vector-borne diseases. For example, mosquitoes, we have dengue, fever, and so on and so on. The observatory has done an analysis relating this phi, which is an indication of mosquito abundance in Hong Kong. And mosquito abundance in Hong Kong is closely related to T, which is the temperature, and also R, which is the rainfall. Now, given the future trend of climate change in Hong Kong, where we get hotter temperatures and more rainfall, the mosquito problem will only go worse from now. And what makes things worse is that something called incubation periods or viral replication inside the body of the mosquito gets much faster with higher temperatures. And also, mosquitoes tend to bite a lot more in higher temperatures. So that changed the disease transmission dynamic altogether. So we should be prepared for this kind of vector-borne diseases. As a matter of fact, we do have other vector-borne diseases in Hong Kong, like those carried by mites and ticks and so on. Unfortunately, I can't find any relevant studies in Hong Kong, but making use of studies in US, for example, in Canada, for example, vector-borne diseases like those of Lyme disease carried by ticks and so on will significantly increase in the future. And last, this is the last slide, it's about air pollution. Air that we breathe day in, day out is going to affect us. And one aspect is that this is a chart showing the ozone concentration against temperature in Tung Chung. Unfortunately, Tung Chung is one of the areas with the worst air pollution problem. In this chart, we see very clearly that cases of high ozone concentration occurs only in high temperatures. And the correlation is also a kind of positive correlation. And this is a case of a very hot day a couple of years ago, before the approach of a typhoon to Hong Kong. We noticed that in the small hours in the morning, the ozone concentration is very low, in fact zero in some hours. But then when the temperature gets higher and higher, the ozone concentration shot up to a dangerous level. So as the temperature is going to rise in the future, we are going to see more of this high ozone concentration scenario in the future. Unfortunately, even with all the efforts of Xingye, Wang Gamxing, the cases of ozone concentration, high ozone concentration is still on the rise at the moment. So coupled with high temperatures in the future, this is something that we have to deal with. So with that, I hand over to you, Diane.
Well, if that didn't tell you how this is all going to affect you in very specific detail, as the student said, how is it going to affect me every day? I'm not sure that's the answer they were hoping to hear, or that any of us were hoping to hear, but I think that you certainly inspired us to see the pain and with evidence. So we talked a little bit about, oh, you hear things, fake news, etc. I didn't actually fact check any of your charts, WM, but I trust you, and that's horrifying. So we have Christine Lowe, Revolution in Our Time. Turns out she was actually the good cop, and you're the bad cop, WM, talking about some of the things that are coming down in the line. We'll do one brief review of the even better cop, Professor Stephen Lau, because he's actually tackling some of these problems in a very community way, in a sustainable way, and will show us a few pictures of the different campuses, the workplaces, and the schools that he is building to address some of the health, and then we'll have a spirited conversation. Thank you for your patience.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to choose the sitting down position to speak.
Okay, no lay flat, just sitting down.
Because my wife thought that I have been overdressed today when I told her that I'm going to give another lecture No, I've been giving like about 50 lectures, by the way, all online. So he said, aren't you in the work from home mode? No, we only need...
We're very grateful you wore pants today.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's what my wife thought. I have been overdressed. There are two persons in the room that I like to address and thank them for feeding me for the last 29 years. Professor Chui Lap Ji and Professor Roland Chin. No, hi. But they are not the person who have made me nervous. There's a third person in the room, Charleston from MIT Note. He's the boss of my daughter. So I'm particularly very nervous today because of the three of let's give it a try. And okay. And by the way, my long hair is also a witness of the WFH mode. No, so. But to give you a better side of the story, I've been adapted, like Professor Chui Lap Ji mentioned. I've been adapted when I was working in another place, not in Hong Kong, in Singapore. And definitely, the way I would dress today would be very much considered overdressed if I'm around in the campus. I was there for about 5-6 years, and like every person, and I don't wear all this gear that all these gentlemen have, the tie and the suit, right? So the message I like to bring to the students is don't wear tie. And definitely don't wear suit, you know. Then we can make the temperature, the room temperature, drop by at least one degree. And, right?
Very practical.
You get the message. Okay, right. Okay, so I have about 10 million slides, but I think...
okay, you have 1 minute to go through them.
but I think if you look at 3 of them, it's enough. They all tell the same story, you know. Can I? Oh. Yeah. Wow. Statistics have been telling us that we spend up to 90% of our everyday life indoor. So the environment shaped us very much. And so these are examples I've chosen. And these are quite recent examples that I hope will give us some stimulations about the learning environment, how we can make our learning environment very conducive to people's behavior. Because just now the example, the laugh I was trying to provoke is the backside story is about adaptation and behavior, right? So the idea is to let us adapt, you know, let us change our habits and behavior. So these are examples from all over the world. After I done that, I realized I didn't choose any Hong Kong examples, but then I realized St. Paul is going to make a new one, right? St. Paul, yeah. So over to the principal, right? This is an example in a kindergarten schools in Japan, and this is how they let the kids go around. The major issue, if you look, you might know, is that the balustrade, the handrails are very, very sort of freestyle, and then the building authority didn't give any big noise about it, about safety, because here they don't want safety. They just want the kid to run around, you know. So again, about innovation, right? This is an example in Beijing, a very famous Chinese architect, a very famous guy, you know, and he designed. And here the story is about when we built a conducive environment, bring the kids to the outside, but also you let them when they go around, run around, you know. This is in inner Beijing, right? But if they run around, you also don't let them forget about the heritage, the history they are in. So all this Wutong House, no, the Wutong House in the courtyard house in Beijing is particularly rare and precious. You know, so this architect make a big, huge statement, I think. This is also, I think, maybe a number of you have been visited this in Bali. If you are in Bali, spend about $100 US, then you get a one-day tour to experience the school. You can go from a classroom to the classroom, because each hut is a classroom. and they don't have any doors. They're all opened, you know. So for that small money, you're donating to this foundation, but you also get to experience with the kids of all grades. So this is a kindergarten, a preschool, a nursery, and a little bit of the primary schools. You know, started by two expatriates who was first finding a job in Bali, and they found that there's no school there. So they end up getting this school recognized. But one thing they are very insistent is about the material. They say this building must be close to nature and made of bamboo. Okay. This is a high school in the US recently, but this is claimed to be one of the first zero carbon building. No? So again, it's taking systems, what we will call, in my trade, we will call active systems. Anything that use machinery, we call them active. Right? So this is a kind of another kind of approach to make your building better performed. This is the school I was in for the last several years, and it gives another kind of environment or reminder for us that if you live, if you work, if you play, this is the best combination you can get, because after all, I was told that we spend 95% of our time indoor, right? So this is what you do, right? So you do go around from campuses to campuses and so on and so forth. More about this kind of approach. Okay, this is perhaps the last slide.
Okay.
And pushing a little bit about the limit and about how we can. Don't forget, Christine was mentioning about Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and this is about what we could do, right? We have the CIC Zero building in Hong Kong, and recently the two governments are talking about setting up something as a kind of a demonstration project. So I think this is also a kind of a future. This kind of approach will pave the future for us, I think, in the way we will conceive the building that we will stay in. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for blossoming our imagination and kind of reimagining schools. It kind of made me think about hospitals. It's interesting you don't have any hospitals on your slide.
No, I don't have any slides. Okay.
One of the things that Dr. Young, you sound like you're inspired to start talking about it. What do you think? I mean, you've just gotten the revolution, you've gotten the dire circumstance, and you've gotten some beautiful pictures of what life could be.
Yeah, I try to just address one by one. Okay, thank you very much for WM's slides reminding me, there's a lot of non-accidental hospitalizations related to the climate change, okay? So, and this is true. Because this is our daily life, and in healthcare organizations. I work in the hospital authorities. We have 17 casualty departments, 43 hospital institutions. We serve the 7.5 million Hong Kong people. And every day, we are a lot of people attending to our casualty. Why? Because I tell you, throughout the whole year, we prepare for the winter surge. If you remember sometimes, before the COVID years, I go back to 2019, we always talk about the winter surge period. The hospital authority will arrange for more people, well prepared, ask the population to vaccinate against the influenza, something like that, and prepare for the winter. Why? Because the temperature change, especially the change in the amplitude, will trigger more and more, not only the infectious disease, just like the influenza, but also those cardiovascular disease and like stroke, and also the heart attacks. Therefore, we will see a huge demand in our inpatient service during that time. And then every year, once we eat our winter solstice date, the Dongji, and then the winter surge will come up, and we prepared it, and then almost go to the month of May, we will go down. But we have to prepare more and more manpower, especially at the casualty, and prepare for the wards. And what happened during those summer time, and from May to July, we look at the OV traps mentioned by WM because we have to make sure the mosquitoes are not very high, and we have almost all the OV traps in the area of the hospitals. And we know they have a very, like a watchdog, and whenever there's a rise in the index, they will inform the hospitals. We will do a lot of things to prepare to make the environment better. So the climate change makes us just like a day life. And then from July onwards to November, we are planning for the next winter surge. So all year round, we work around with the climate change. And for Professor Stephen Lau, yeah, Oh, sorry, Lau, okay, Professor Lau, sorry. You also remind me, it's very important, the healing process is not only by medical team or by the nursing teams. It's also by the environment. And for those who may have visit Twin Moon Hospital, the leading hospitals of the New Territory West, actually we have a Maggie Center within the campus of the Twin Moon Hospital. If you say Twin Moon, everyone will say, oh, look, those needy people over there, they are much lower social class, they are not very well off. But once you go to the Maggie Center, it's within the campus. You will imagine you go to the resort area, like in the Thailand or in something. What's the Maggie Center? It's actually an NGO making a very beautiful resort area, a patient resources center for the cancer patients. They are talking about the healing environment. When those cancer patients go in, their emotion is much better, and the environment actually is part of the healing process for those centers. So all these make everything together, but of course I'm very supportive of Christine's revolutionary direction. We must do something about the climate because these are our yearly day-to-day operations. If the climate can be addressed well, I think we will do. We can have a much better day. But on the other side, I would like to say, but because of the climate change, so for the students, we still have many vacancies for our
Are you
healthcare
recruiting from the
professionals.
stage?
Yes. So we welcome many youngsters to join the healthcare team and to serve our people. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think that there's a lot of ways to be involved in wellness and involved in healthcare. Sorry, Professor, you were just about to say something. Please,
yes,
go ahead.
We have a few very good presentations just now, and we have learned a lot about the environment. Okay, we know that the environment has great impacts on our health. Okay, even if we're born with good genes, we're a genetic expert here, still, if the environment is bad, we will get sick. Okay, we talk a lot about our diet, which is part of the environment, a lot about exercise, we should keep ourselves healthy. We talk a lot about anti-smoking. We talk about alcohol, drugs, abstinence, harm of drugs, and so on and so forth, radiation, chemicals. But I think I think even we talk about climates and environment, and I think it's still we are not talking a lot about it. I think we still need to have more emphasis on it, and I think the Department of Health, they have branches talking about smoking, alcohol, diet, and so on. But I think climate is certainly one of the important issues here, and we have learned a lot about the bad effects of our changing climate, the adversity as the result, effects on food, effects on our cardiovascular system, effects on the diseases, vector-related diseases, and so on. But we don't have much solution as far. Rather, I mean, we are still struggling. What I'm saying is that we are still struggling. We heard a lot of in the news about all these big countries, G7, G20s, talk about how we can reduce pollutions. make our climates better. But I think we are making very little progress as far as I can see. Yeah, sure. And what I'm wants our younger generations to know is that this is an important issue, not only affecting us, the present generations, but the future generations. And also, we have problem in recruiting young people into academics nowadays. We need talents go into research, creating new knowledge about all these things. One of them is our climate change, how it affects our health, and how we can prevent it, how we can make solutions. And I think we have a big challenge ahead of us, and we are waiting for the next generations to do something about it.
So that we are not waiting for the next generation to do something about it. We are not waiting. Did you hear Christine's video? We are acting now. I think, well, so the good news in the room.
We are inviting them to join us.
Yes, thank you. Collective collaboration. I think that's great. So let's have some good news, because we're going to spend the rest of the panel with all of you guys talking about the things that we can do, the things that we are doing, and potential calls to action. And you know, it doesn't have to be, I think sometimes we can get a little noble about it and we need to do this. I, for one, am thinking that if temperatures are rising the way WM says they are, and if Ronnie's spending $1 million on the electricity bill in Asia Society, for those students who are looking to make a little extra money, if you could figure out how to have the Asia Society electric bill, I'm pretty sure there's some good money in that for you. So there are opportunities here for you to get creative. But on a bigger scale, James, housing society. I mean, at the end of the day, we heard about the hospital that is providing a good environment. We heard from Stephen about the environments they're creating. And so you have a big remit, right? I think that the professor is struggling with this, and you have some solutions. So, you know, please tell us what are you doing about this?
Well, unfortunately, we do not have any project yet, including in Professor Lau.
So now you're recruiting him from the stage. Okay. Yeah. This is a very value creative panel.
Well, actually, when we talk about electricity, well, quoting from a widely quoted source, Hong Kong 2015 is now about 90% of electricity are spent from the buildings here in Hong Kong, and over 60% of carbon emission are from buildings. So there's surely quite a lot of things to do in making our buildings more energy efficient, less carbon emission, and well, just like what needed, well, we need to catch up, because just like our housing supply also need to catch up in the same way. Actually, housing society in the coming 10 years is going to produce about 28,000 housing units in the coming 10 years, and about 40,000 housing units in the coming 20 years. I think it's the right time for us to better plan to work out our sustainability roadmap for our all sorts of construction activities. And we understand that throughout a building life cycle, there are different impacts on the environment, ranging from the design, planning and construction, as well as when the buildings come into operation and maintenance. So this year, we're going to kickstart a life cycle assessment of making use of one of our new projects as an example, so that we can assess the different stage of building life to see the impact, including the energy consumption as well as carbon emission in different stage of the building, in order to map out the suitable strategy at different stage of our activities, including construction, as well as our management and maintenance, because we are both acting as the housing developer as well as a housing manager. So we have a different, well, across divisional efforts need to be made to ensure that our role its better play in contributing to the green Hong Kong. And because arising from this consideration, we also joined Wang Gamseng initiative of the Carbon Neutrality Partnership this year. So we do not need to wait until we finish the whole building life cycle assessment because, well, that is truly helpful for us to develop a comprehensive strategy. But what we can do now is, starting from this year, we're going to include the requirement of a list of certified green building materials into our building contracts. That's something we can start first because upcoming we have a lot of projects and contracts coming up, so we can start to do that. For the existing building, it's a little bit tricky because they're quite old and the design is not quite easily make it more efficient. But still, we're doing what we can, such as making use of solar panel and replace with the LED lighting, etc. But I think that it's better for us to, since we have a lot of coming up projects, it's better for us to start at the early design stage to do something about it. So hopefully we can get some projects that can be Dr. Lau's teaching material in the future. So hardware aside, we also see ourselves more than just housing manager. We like to build a livable and healthy community for all the estate under our management. Well, Hong Kong is facing an aging challenge, and the situation is even more severe in the public housing estate under our management. We're now having over 40% of people aged 60 or above. I'm not saying that age 60 is elderly or what, but it's only
wrong audience for
it's only a figure to show that our
only 60.
Yes, only 60.
40% are only 60.
Well, that's an indication of our population is slightly older than that here in Hong Kong, because for quite some years we have not got any new housing estate. That's why a lot of people living with us actually spend a few decades with us. So what we are doing now, because of this, the need of this age may be particularly vulnerable in terms of health and other social support need. And as a property manager, well, we have the trust of them. And we also understand some special need of those particular residents, maybe in need. And that's why we also take the initiative to have aging in place scheme, which is a one-stop service, networking other NGOs as well as a healthcare provider in the neighborhood, so that we, as the manager, understand the special need of particular tenants or residents. We can make use of the network we built in different neighborhoods to match the particular service, to provide the special service to that particular residents, of course with their consent. We hope that by doing this kind of integrated service, we can ensure that they can have a happy and healthy living in order to reduce the work of the hospital.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think when I hear about people going, the health related, the climate change that's leading to different health outcomes and to, frankly, more emergency health outcomes, it makes me think, what can we do to be more preventative? And there was so much talk about smart city before the pandemic, and there still is, but so much of what we're talking about is about, let's be smarter about the way that we build our environments so that it will be, potentially help climate change or reduce climate change, as well as creating communities. So what beyond, the smart city, we tend to think of technology, but what kind of community initiatives do all of you see that can pull in the next generation and the aging in place generation, and make a smart city here in addition to smart city with like embedded tech everywhere. What inspiration do you have for us?
You're talking about involving everyone.
Yeah.
In a concerted effort.
How can we pull together? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the last panel we had discussion about ethical issues. And I think having a right ethical mentality, I think is a motivation for us to carry on with all those necessary actions. Because if you can tell the right from the wrong, and this is some kind of internalizing values. We have been talking about environmental protection actions, climate actions all along. Everybody understand how we can protect the environment, eating a vegetarian diet, less beef, less so on. Everybody knows that, but to do it in a sustainable way is quite difficult. It is also quite lonely because the peers are not doing the same. So is I always doing that kind of thing. So I think with a kind of right ethical mentality, drive us to continue to do things that we think are right. So I don't know how educators can instill this kind of thinking to young people, and also the young people, after getting that kind of mentality, can influence their peers and also the family members and older generations and so on. I think that will make a concerted effort with a bigger momentum to do the revolution, as Christine termed it.
Maybe I could pick up on WM's. Yeah. What we have noted in my profession, for instance, the last year, is tremendous challenges coming from two aspects. One aspect is the life cycle aspect that was picked up by the Housing Authority. James, yes. We are right now we are designing. The law tells us that the building life is we have to, as an architect, guarantee for 50 or 60 years. But for instance, Japan government recently announced from now on all their buildings is going to be 100 years. But that means a lot of money. But spending a little bit more money, but the building will last longer. So there's different kind of concept going on. But life cycle will tell us that if that is a 60 years life cycle, then in fact it doesn't really, what we are telling us is that only the structure is 60 years. The glass is only 30, 20 years. The air conditioning, the waterproofing, the wall paint, they all have much shorter lives. And this is something that we got to realize. If I look at Hong Kong, a lot of our buildings are very, very extremely dilapidated and needs maintenance. The recent instance, COVID, with the plumbing systems, the drainage systems, So they are less than 60 years old, but they are already reaching their lives, right? So this is one aspect we have to look into, which is life cycle. Another aspect is the smart, the smart paradigm, with the AI and with the scientists, with the computings, able to collect a lot of the data, not about building performance, but about human activities. So, for instance, the research I'm now doing is to collect data of every user. So, for instance, the people in this room, we can educate them or we can promote them to discuss which corner you want to sit, or what is the dress, what is the desirable temperature, humidity, So a lot of experiments are now going on with AI, with iPhones. We are interacting so that we can together change our habits. So this, I think, the most important thing is the HI era is pumping us to look at human-orientated building design, not the other way around, which we have been doing for the last 100 years.
What I love about that is this idea, in a way, and maybe I'm taking it, in a different direction, is this idea of agency, and you talked about all the data we collect. So the idea of a citizen scientist is the idea that you will have some data that you are collecting, and that we're aggregating all the data that we collect. And the idea of some of this agency that we're talking about is not that we are going to solve the problems. You guys are all, big guys with big levers: housing society, hospitals, education, observatory, building whole communities. But actually, one of the things that's exciting is there's never been a time in history when each one of the people sitting in the row, on either side, can have an influence in the outcome. So what can we do to educate, be it public service announcements, be it, how we engage the community to get everyone involved? And maybe, James, you have I loved your example during our prep call about, the fact that students in high school can volunteer to help the NGOs that are helping aging in place. I thought that was a great example, but I welcome, others.
Well, actually, that's what our neighborhood network is doing. We engage some young people, maybe in the secondary school or tertiary education, to come to take the COVID as an example. Well, we have a very severe fifth wave situation because of some the infection in our housing estate, and quite a lot of elderly residents cannot go out. Those infected one may or may not be able to come to go to the hospital for some obvious reason, and they need some care. Well, they can rarely go out, but we make use of our young people to make some concert call, as well as to do some information leaflet or online call to teach the young, the elder resident how to use the RAT and how to recognize the real information about COVID, not disturbed by all the fake news. And this kind of volunteer work, we can engage young people so that they can share they contribute to the healthy living in the community, and that's one of them.
WM Raymond, you said.
Yes, James mentioned about COVID. Of course, COVID has changed our lifestyle every day, and we are now wearing masks, washing hands, putting alcohol into the waste system, and not very environmental, I must say. I hope that will end soon, and after that, I think we should reinvent our life, and I think we should think about it. We have mentioned that people now work from home and things like that. That may reduce office electricity use and things like that. But I think we can think of a broader way of how we can change our how we live every day. Hopefully, after the COVID is gone, not very soon, not very far away, not too far away. I hope it's still kind of lingering on, which is disturbing.
WM, you wanted to cut in. What?
Yeah, I think to involve the community, we need to put across a message that we don't need to be climate change experts to do things that are right. In particular, in the last panel, we discussed about genes, about something that we do good, something we don't do well. Well, for example, if you are artistic, right, you can paint paintings sending the message of climate change. If you are a musician, you can write music about climate change. If you are a drama person, you can put up dramas telling people about climate change. I remember there is a documentary called Chasing Ice. It is a group of photographers telling stories of climate change by stationing in Greenland over weeks and months, capturing the collapse of the ice shelf. And that creates a very striking image to all of us. So each and every one has our speciality. We can make use of what we do best to put across the message.
That's absolutely fantastic. I do think that that was coming from the other panel, which is you don't have to necessarily be a doctor to go into healthcare. There's so many different facets of that, industry and well-being, from housing even to creating the hospitals of the future that can heal without necessarily you having to do a medical degree. So I like that idea. We can all play a part. I'm going to open it to questions to the panelists. You have so many interesting people here. We have a question right here. Where's the microphone?
Thank you. I don't know whether this is a question, but definitely this session really resonates with me. I mean, I've been to how many, climate change, seminars, but I would say that this is one that's really relevant. I'm Amy. I'm in education. I help operate Maryknoll Convent School, in particular the primary section. It is a declared monument in Hong Kong in Kowloon Tong along Waterloo Road. What you all here, gentlemen and ladies, said just now is what we're living at school right now. We're a declared monument. We're built on a little hill, and the greens basically cover more than the built area. So we have more lawns and gardens than we have built school campus. The school campus is only 3 stories high. And what we're doing, actually, we've been under pressure in a sense. For instance, because of the call for helping with the climate change efforts, for instance, we've been keeping our furniture. The furniture for our little girls, 6 years old, 7 years old, are 75 years old. These are wooden furniture, wooden chairs, wooden tables. And people have been telling me, Amy, you're shortchanging your students. We now have hexagonal, tables that and chairs with wheels so that they can form these discussion groups in 1 minute and they can disband and all that. And I thought about it and asked the teachers, and they said, even for 6, 7-year-olds, they can assemble and disassemble within 1 minute if we want group discussions. So we're keeping those, little wooden chairs and wooden tables. And so one, to heed the climate change call and to make a change in our lifestyle. And secondly, to teach the students that there is longevity in things, that things don't need to be designed for a particular project, for a particular purpose even. You can adapt, and it's up to you to imagine how you want to use those things. For our school, because we're blessed with very high ceiling, the ceiling height for the average classroom is about 23 feet. So we benefit from good ventilation. And of course, we're low rise as well. So our air conditioning, we need air conditioning. Yes, we do in Hong Kong these days. But we actually switch them on a lot later. And I can tell you, people really feel the difference. When we recruit teachers, this is the 3rd biggest reason why they want to join us. First reason, of course, academics and all that. The 3rd reason is the campus. So, but there's one question, Mr. Leung. Mosquitoes. The gardens are teaching tools. We bring our school students out to but oh my goodness, when they come back, they have like a dozen red spots. This factor for disease that is worrying. How can we help?
I don't know.
That's a
I
big
don't have
one.
any answers. But Professor Choi is there. I think there is some genetic way where, to decrease the mosquito population. I don't know whether it works or not. But I think the thing that we can do right now is to protect our children using mosquito spray and things like that, and take care of the environment.
Dr. Young, you.
Yeah, I may give some sharing of the hospital practice, because we do have many greenery areas and how we handle those mosquitoes. Okay, so don't let don't let the environment have any stagnant pool of water. If there is really a pool, a pond, you have sometimes to take some fish inside so they can just eat those mosquito eggs, larvas. And other things we are using is the drainage. We ask our foreman to do a lot of checking so that the drainage will be good, because every now and then after the rain, there are a lot of the leaves going down and block the drainage, and that will also cause more mosquitoes to grow. And the third thing is we also make use of something like some machines. They actually can just ask to threaten those mosquitoes away, but you only push the mosquito to the other side. Yeah. But I think maybe, yes, it's good to have some genetic engineering of the mosquitoes in the future days. At least maybe they are doing the good things. They bite you, and then at least to vaccinate you, so that it's easier for us to get more during the time when we are needed.
I can actually imagine you taking your students to see what they're doing in the hospital and say, okay, we have a problem at our school, and these are mosquitoes, and this is the hospital, where you can see how they take care of it. So we solve the internship/exposure problem, and maybe they'll have an even better idea. But thank you for sharing. I think that idea of, what can we respect of the past? How can we make it really long-lasting and keep what we care about, and yet innovate for the future to adapt and change as we have to deal with these climate changes, and we have to deal with the effects from healthcare and, frankly, aging, which is, is its own thing. So did you have a comment, WM? Do you have your own mosquito?
Just one thing about mosquito abundance. I use OV-trap index as an indication, but don't put too much weight on it, because in one case,
it looks so official.
Where I live,
That's why I let you share your slides. They look so official.
Where I live is lychee cock, and the index is 0, and I got bitten by mosquitoes.
Oh,
so always be vigilant.
All right. Well, so one of the things, do we have more questions? Ken, yes.
I didn't introduce myself last time. I'm the class of 82, St. Paul's College. Actually, one of the comments Mr. Leung mentioned, I totally agree, is actually about the youth, educate the youth, because I just keep sharing an example. My young kid, right? The school teach about the recycling. Came home, forced me to have recycle a box. So forced us all the plastic, all the cans. And so from that was actually when he was in primary school. And from ever since then, I have this recycle box at home, in the kitchen, right? For the past so many years. So actually, that really changed a lot of the mindset. And I agree with your idea about, how do we do this? Right? We cannot wait. Christine mentioned about we need revolution. So my question is, from my own experience, is actually you can start with the young people, right? Their mind are very open. They're willing to learn. So how can the school actually implement something? Like, for example, right now, all the companies are talking about sustainability, right? All the listed company, you have this sustainability committee because of the, stock exchange requirement, sustainability report, all this stuff. But that actually is a forcing mechanism for company need to look at this, start putting in a lot of measures. So I'm just thinking whether there's a sort of an opportunity for school start having some kind of sustainability initiative for every single school, and that you incorporate some kind of classes or subject or project and kickstart these young people so it become part of their learning, for the 12 years in school, which build, and then actually it will push back to the family because of the kid. They come home and ask the parents to follow it. And you start the revolution, you start to change. I'm just thinking of an idea, whether this is something we can do.
Comment? Anybody willing to spearhead? I can see a competition between schools,
well, I
too.
don't know, in my school days, we have a physics society, astronomy society, but no climate change society. I don't know whether there's any climate change society in SPC. I hope there is. Because if you walk alone, it's always very lonely. But if you work with a group of students, peers, and so on, then, that really empower you to do the right things. So why don't we start with the Climate Change Society and SPC, and from that we can move forward.
All right, another question, microphone. Thank you. Climate Change Society.
Professor Lau, you showed a picture of New York high school, which is zero carbon emission. For schools in Hong Kong, what can we do? Like for St. Paul's, we have a school premise that is at least 60 years old, and we're using the design that is not environmentally efficient. What can we do, and what can the students do in order to help them learn about climate change?
I've been waiting for this question the whole morning. Sorry, just a joke. I think there's a lot of things we can start off with. Not touching the building, and use a shorter term, but a bigger effect. I want to cite the example when I moved to another country and started teaching there. I was quite astonished to see the university, is completely almost, I would say like 80% paperless. See, so that takes a lot of culture to change, a system change, no papers. Everything is on computer. So immediately, I think, that's why I just prompted, not me, but a lot of us, in my trade to think it's not the building that we care so much in this new challenge, it's about behavior. So that's why I brought it up in my examples. I hope we can do it right this time. And then we spend less bucks too. If we change the teachers, the students. Well, when I say 80% is paperless, another 20% still need to be paper because of the legal issues, contractual issues, examination issues that we cannot do away with. But otherwise, I think you can do it. And paper is a big chunk of carbon emission activities in our office or teaching work. So, but it also needs a big system change. I don't know whether that is good enough, but but maybe we can take a step
one by one, right? I mean, I don't think we can wait for good enough. We got to do the things that present themselves, and then we do the next best thing and the next best thing. So sometimes we wait till the best thing comes along to do. Other questions that we have in terms of? I have a question which is sort of a follow-on from your question, which was what can the students do? And I'm flipping it a little bit, which is how can we help young people have their voices heard and engage with an audience like the one we have assembled today? Because we're kind of talking to each other a little bit, and we've talked to the students, but how can we have pathways for us to listen to students, to hear their voices, to amplify and elevate their ideas?
Maybe I try first.
Sure.
And examples that I was given to the audience is these examples are telling us that how they change the mentality of the student, of the young ones, by living very close to nature. So that is the key change, when they start out at young age, So then you have the other example just now. The gentleman was sharing that his kid forced him to install. So we are seeing that as one strategy. You start with very young, but you give them the right sort of exposures and mentalities. So maybe I stop at that.
And how about the hospitals, academia, observatory, housing society? How do you capture the voices of young people?
I think we need to be. They need to experience. to have mosquito bite is not a bad idea, because once they have bites, they know that there's something wrong there, you know. And you know, when many decades ago, we don't see dengue fever, but now in the recent years, when the rain comes, and then we see cases of dengue fever. Not imported from Singapore though, but it's local cases, so it's real. So the younger generations have to see that this climate change effect is real, so that they can actually take it seriously. Otherwise, it is just something distant to them, and I think that's important to make sure that they know the serious consequence of this climate change, the adversity.
I just follow up Diana's questions about how to get the voices of the younger generations. In the hospital authority, we are going to have the Smart Hospital initiative, and that also includes not only for the smart care, but also for the smart staff or the smart team. And we are designing some platform. But I must say it's only experimental, because nowadays the younger people the topics they are interested not necessarily are those topics we are interested. So how can we know that communication channel, and we may use some soft side. They are talking about some movies or something like where to go, where to eat, and how can we tag some important message together with the interest topics is a challenge for us and also for them, because they actually want their voices being heard by the others, including the seniors. But I think it's a good way, as long as we can make use of the many technologies nowadays, and also the technologies becoming available in the very short future. I'm thinking everyone are adapting to the future using the new communications channel. Thank you.
So back to communication a little bit, like we talked about in the last panel in terms of that. Did you have a quick comment? And then we'll take another question.
So actually on our side, we have a couple platforms to engage young people. We have organized a general technology competition for a couple of times. And during this competition, our young people from different schools, they have different suggestions of making some device useful to elderly people to help aging in place. And some of the idea we can tape on to further develop whether it's a suitable product to be installed in our housing project. We also have the internship program for tertiary as well as secondary students. So they will have a chance to see the work of our different divisions, including the planning and property management. So throughout the process, they may have some idea to instill actually into us, to encourage our colleagues to think, okay, there may be other ways of doing things, to how to make use of all the recycling opportunities, or how to promote in the neighborhood, in the different housing estate, to appeal to young people and other residents. So these are the useful platforms we will continue to make use of to get young people idea. After all, the future is there.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. One question in the back, please.
Thank you, guest speaker, your great sharing this morning. And quick question. I know, as you may understand, nowadays the technology is really evolving, and like nowadays there's a new technology on food science, like molecular meat. Actually, it helps climate change. As people, we are eating less meat, right? So my question is, how do you see the future of the healthcare sectors looks like in 10 or 20 years? And how, as a young people, like 5 to 10 years old right now, how should they prepare if they want to be a doctor in 10 or 20 years' time? How will it looking like? Yep. Thank you.
That was something we talked about in our last seminar. Deacon and Justin was there. And I think people always think that a medical profession or healthcare-related profession is about science, okay? But we last time we talked about a lot about humanity and to prepare ourselves to prepare themselves for healthcare-related professions. I think has to be a broad-based education, not only the STEM, the science and technology, but also the humanity part, the language, and also the arts, and it is a holistic approach to the problems. As we have mentioned now, that healthcare is actually related to everything, you know, engineering, science, but also arts and climate change. A lot of things are interrelated. So broad-based education is important. And all those things are changing. And we talk about lifelong learning. And learning doesn't stop at high school or universities, but things are changing. The drugs that we use now is quite different from what we used to do in 20, 30 years ago. So we have to educate ourselves all the time and see the new problems and find new solutions and maintain our curiosity, creating new knowledge.
That seems, yes, WM.
Yeah, I want to chip in a little bit. If the younger generations wants to get into the medical profession and at the same time contribute to mitigating climate change, they don't need to be doctors, they don't need to be nurses and so on. Because the hospital itself, the medical profession itself is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. If someone say, if the medical industry is an independent country, then it is the 5th largest carbon emitter of the whole world. So if you want to help in that aspect, you can, be an engineer and then get into the medical industry and then try to help reducing the carbon emission. And that is a big, that will make a big impact.
Well, I love this panel because we can't agree on anything. I thought we had it with the mosquitoes, but even Raymond said it's a good thing for us to have mosquitoes. So it's a really big topic, caring for people, caring for the planet. We have one more. Okay, am I allowed to one more question? Okay.
Yes, the panel is splendid. And that reminds me of a question which I don't expect answers. We're talking about building our future, and I can't help thinking, who's going to champion the whole thing, which is multidimensional? It also relates to education. When we talk about education, we talk about schools, but a lot of learning happens outside schools. So when 2016, when we have a group of people doing some advocacy on education, we call ourselves Education 2.1, we have an internal motto. Singapore is successful because of the government. Hong Kong should be successful despite the government. Now, we are not downgrading the government, but the future cannot be handled only by silos in the government bureaucracy. So who's going to champion the whole thing? I'm not saying decreeing and also or directing or coordinating. No. There are so many dimensions. There should be some championship. And that championship may relate to something like a metaverse notion, which is not due to one single bureaucracy. But that is going to happen, I think.
Well, I can say as somebody who's lived here for 20 years, that the people who are going to champion the future of Hong Kong are the people of Hong Kong. And there's so much strength in, pulling together as a city, as a society to really champion that shared future that we have. So I think that, and Dennis, of course, you'll be assigned St. Paul's College to make sure that we are championing all of it in the future. So thank you. Healthy planet, healthy people, work, technology. We talked about a lot of stuff. And I would like to say that, or invite you to imagine that this is the beginning of a conversation, which our panelists have kicked off so lovely. And I hope that we have many more of these conversations where we hold each other accountable and we come back together in a couple of months and say, okay, what have we done? Who has taken the lead this time in championing this? And I hope that also our student leaders will invite themselves to have a lot of participation. I will say one thing that they said would be really helpful is if more of you guys came into the classroom and shared your own personal stories with them about how you navigated the journey of your lives as inspiration. So please raise your hand if you're willing to go into the school and share your story at some point. I won't hold you to it. Everybody willing to share their story with a student? Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to hold you to it. I lied. 3 months later, I'll call you up and see if you did it. Thank you so much for a wide-ranging discussion in St. Paul's College.
Thank you so much for the enlightening discussion on the future of climate change and healthcare. All speakers, please remain on stage.
As a token of appreciation, we would like to present souvenirs to the moderator and all our speakers. May we now invite Mr. Dennis Yun, our principal, to present the souvenirs to them. Mr. Yun, please.
May we invite Professor Stephen Lau to receive the souvenir, please. Dr. Deacon Xian, please. Professor Raymond Liang, please. Mr. Weng Mo Learn, please. Mr. James Chan, please. And Miss Diana Wu David, please. Miss Stephen and all the speakers, please step forward to take a group photo. Thank you all. Please be seated in the first row of the hall. Mr. Yun, please remain on stage.
We would also like to take this opportunity to thank our 4 distinguished alumni who serve as the moderators of the past seminars in these seminar series. May we invite Mr. Yun to present souvenirs to them. Mr. Yun, please. May we invite Mr. Ken Yeung to receive the souvenir, please. Please stay for a group photo. Professor Justin Wu, please. Dr. S.K. Fong, please. Mr. C.M. Shen, please. Thank you, Mr. Yun. Please remain on stage.
As today's event is drawing to a close, may we invite Mr. Yun, our principal, to deliver closing remarks for the event. Mr. Yun, please.
Well, thank you very much for your support. Your presence here today actually means a lot to us. I'm sure you agree with me that we have had some very thought-provoking and inspiring discussions today. I must thank Diana for her very excellent job in moderating these sessions, and as well as the generosities of all the speakers here for sharing their ideas and suggestions with us. Of course, I must not forget about all my teachers and students here who have been doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, looking after all the logistics to ensure the smooth running of the whole seminar series as well as the plenary sessions today. My gratitude, last of all, to Asia Society for such a wonderful opportunity of partnership. Actually, we have learned a lot while working with you. I know this concluding speech is the only thing between you and lunch today, and I obviously have no intention of competing with a better option, particularly at this particular time of today. And if I only had time for just one sentence conclusion for this plenary session, I would actually use a statement by Franklin Roosevelt, in which he said, "We cannot always prepare the future for our youth, but we can prepare our youth for the future." That encapsulates quite succinctly the whole rationale of our seminar series. We ask ourselves a lot of questions. What's in the future for our young people? Obviously, we do not have a crystal ball to look into the future. But we do see megatrends developing, and we want our students to know. We also want our parents to know. We also want to find out what we should be doing to equip our students so that they have the necessary mindset, skill sets, and values, the agency to navigate the future. Dr. S.K. Fong took the lead, and we started planning the sessions. The plenary sessions today, it's really a small step. As Diana said, perhaps a beginning to engage all the major stakeholders for a dialogue, We hope people understand that preparing students for the future is not just the sole responsibility of the educators. In fact, all the major stakeholders, including the industry leaders and the business sector, schools and families, academics and universities, and the government, all major stakeholders, we have all a role to play because young people are our future. What is required is not really sporadic attempts by individual parties, but very concerted, well-organized, well-coordinated efforts so that we can empower our students to explore and to develop their passion, that energy for them to keep learning, that drive, that make them overcome constraints and difficulties and setback, that fire in the belly to make them feel they need to be faster, greater, smarter. Well, we hope we have started this. A lot has been said today. I'm not going to repeat it. We hope that we have actually started you thinking. We hope we have started planting some seeds for future collaboration and partnership opportunities with all of you here. When summer holiday comes in March, and when human touch, like a simple handshake or a hug, can actually kill, we know we are living in strange times. And young people grow up in a world beset by crises. Yet, our message to our young people is that yes, this is a VUCA world, but it is also a world abounds with opportunities. With all the 21st century technological innovations, young people are the best placed to ride on these waves of megatrends. What we must do, of course, is to think long term. We must act so that they are ready for the future. Thank you very much once again for your support. I hope you enjoyed the sessions as much as we do. And last of all, let me wish you all good health, good luck, happy Mother's Day, and a smashing long weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yoon.
Thank you once again for attending the plenary session today. We hope that you found it inspiring and insightful. Have a nice weekend.